This National Wellness Institute webinar is a reimagining wellness conversation with Dee Sharma, who's co-founder and CEO of Wellness Coach. And today we'll be focusing on prioritizing employee wellness for a remote workforce. Before we introduce Dee, we are going to begin with Corrine Summers. And Corrine, if you'd like to join us on your webcam. Corrine Summers is the founder of Artisan Pharmacy, as well as a meditation and yoga coach for the Wellness Coach app. Corrine's going to lead us in a 7-minute meditate and stretch restore session, which will show you how you can incorporate restorative stretching and mindfulness meditation into your daily routines in practical but powerful ways to reduce stress, right at your desk. It will help clear away tension and create the space in your body and mind to move back into your day feeling re-energized and refreshed. Corrine, thanks so much for starting off our presentation today with this exercise.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to see such an incredible audience here today. My goal is really to move you through something that you can replicate then on your own. So bringing the mindfulness tools that we share in the Wellness Coach app to your everyday. So the very first thing we're going to do is make ourselves comfortable right where we are. So whether you're sitting in a chair or on another piece of furniture or even on the floor, just take a moment to move around in your seat and make your body comfortable. And I'm going to invite you to also close your eyes or shift your gaze downward to start taking that kind of internal focus. Feel your feet resting on the floor, finding some stability there. And then sitting up tall, find some length through the base of your spine up to the crown of your head. Take a moment to relax your shoulders away from your ears, keeping the eyes closed. And then bring your awareness to your breathing. For a moment, just noticing that you're breathing. Feeling the air flow in through the nose and out through the nose. And allowing your chest and belly to expand and relax. Expand and relax. Now letting your chin drop all the way down to your chest, relax the back of your neck. We tend to build a lot of tension in the neck and shoulders. I call this tech neck, from sitting hunched over our computers, especially working from home in all different areas. So take a moment to just feel, where do you have tension in the neck and shoulders, and can you move a little bit in a way to release it? So letting your chin float a little bit from side to side, completely relaxing the back of the neck and shoulders. And then starting to take your head all the way around in a few circles. We'll go a few circles in each direction. Keeping the eyes closed and being present with your movement. Feeling that release of tension. You might also hear some crackling or popping. That's totally normal. Take a few the other direction if you haven't already. Wonderful. Now lift the head back up above the shoulders. Come to a little bit of stillness for a moment. Again, notice your breathing. Make sure you're breathing slowly and deeply and didn't start to clench up the belly at all. And now we're going to gently twist from side to side. So gently twist to your right, using your hands on your lap as a little bit of leverage. Gently twist to the left. Keeping your sit bones steady and just again, keeping the twist in the low belly, low spine, releasing that tension from lots of time spent sitting. And now back to neutral. Take a moment and lift your arms all the way up over your head. Feeling a nice full body stretch from the low spine all the way up through the tips of your fingers. Keep your feet rooted into the ground. Hugging the inner arms and shoulders towards your ears as you elongate and lift the arms. And then take your left hand to the right wrist and just give it a gentle little pull. So that should create a nice stretch through the right side of your body as you gently pull the wrist and bend towards the side. Keep breathing slowly and deeply. And now move to the other side, taking your right wrist to the left hand, left wrist, and then gently pulling, stretching out the side body. And back to center. Now relax your arms completely at your sides or back into your lap. Now that we've released a little bit of that physical tension, it'll be easier for the mind to relax. Letting go of any outside thoughts or distractions. Bring all of your awareness back to the breath. Once again, becoming present that you're breathing. Feeling the rise and fall of your chest and your belly as you breathe. And as you notice thoughts entering your mind, practice just letting them go and bringing your attention back to the breath. So noticing that your mind has wandered. Taking a breath out can help with a little bit of release. And then once again, noticing the air as it slowly enters and leaves your body. All right, now take a moment and notice if your mind wandered too far to some other thought. Remember, that is normal and natural. We're just practicing coming back to the present. Once again, noticing that you're breathing. And now taking a long, slow breath in. Allow the lungs and belly to fill, or the lungs to fill, the belly to expand and open with that breath. And a big exhale out the mouth, like a big sigh. Taking a couple more like that, big breath in, big sigh-like breath out. Imagining letting go of any remaining tension, any remaining thoughts on your mind. And slowly coming back to the presence of the room you're sitting in. Once again, feeling your body resting in your chair, your seat. Bringing your awareness to the eyes. Taking one last quick moment to just notice how you're feeling right now. Hopefully a little more relaxed, a little more restored and free in your mind and body. Putting it on like an inner armor that you can carry with you back out of this practice into the conversation ahead and the rest of your day. Opening your eyes to fully return to the room when it feels right to you. And thank you again for joining me for this quick practice. Be well, enjoy today's conversation, and I hope to see you very soon for a class in the Wellness Coach app. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Corinne, for starting us off with that wonderful exercise.
Thanks, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much. All right, now that we've all had a chance to experience some stretching and some meditation, we're going to move into the conversation side of our webinar. Before we do so, we'd like to start out with just one poll question to get to know a little bit more about our audience today. So on your screen, you can see the poll question. You can click right on the screen. So what does your workplace wellness program offer? So which one of these best describes? Is it primarily physical only programming? Do employees have access to wellness programming and an EAP? Mental health and therapy services plus health insurance? A very robust program? Or is this just not applicable? Maybe you're not in an organization or you don't have one at all. Okay, well, it looks like just 2% have only physical programming. 29% have access to wellness programming and an EAP. 9% with the mental health and therapy service with health insurance. The biggest group, 46% of you say you have a very robust program, and 13% are not applicable. So thanks for taking time to complete that poll. And I would now like to introduce you to the individuals who will be having the conversation with us today. First, we have Chuck Gillespie, who's the CEO of the National Wellness Institute, and will be moderating the conversation today. And then I'd especially like to welcome Dee Sharma, who's the co-founder and CEO of Wellness Coach. Dee is a lifelong meditator turned serial entrepreneur who is passionate about using technology to enhance our mental health. After experiencing corporate burnout, Dee traveled the world for a year to study meditation and returned home to launch his newest venture, a wellness company committed to helping today's workforce avoid burnout and learn mindfulness. Wellness Coach is an all-encompassing digital wellness platform that provides live coaching and tools for mental, physical, social, and financial well-being. Dee, thank you so much for being here. And Chuck, Dee, I'll turn this over to you.
Thanks so much, Trina. And Dee, welcome. Thank you for being here today. Excited about this conversation.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor. Thank you so much, Chuck.
Hey, so when we look at this poll, anything jump out at you, surprise you in any way, shape, or form with regards to this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually was quite an appropriate poll for where we are right now in our in the pandemic world, not pre-pandemic or post-pandemic right now. And we ask these questions all throughout. So we've been around for a little over 2 years as Wellness Coach. Stress, anxiety was never going away. It was always getting worse, with every generation. And what we found was pre-pandemic to post-pandemic that the stress anxiety levels have been dramatically elevated, which obviously means that you need employers to support employees, new healthcare needs, wellness needs, right? What I really loved about the poll was the 46% thought they had robust wellness programs, which is actually higher than a lot of surveys we see. But also didn't think that the data, that only 9% had access to therapy was actually good data. So obviously there's work needed here. That's why we're talking about the subject today, aren't we?
Without a doubt. And I looked at those numbers, and some of the things that jumped out to me tells me that we probably have a much more, I'll say it this way, a higher level of wellness champion on this webinar today. Because when you look at some of the data, particularly from Gallup and others, most wellness programs in the United States, at least, are very primarily physical only programming. So, at least we have wellness programming with EAP, and sometimes EAP comes with some mental health, not a lot, but some. But without a doubt, I'm actually pleased to see 9% having the mental health and therapy services. And I definitely think, and again, Dee, I'm going to let you kind of take off here. That's definitely an area that we're going to be seeing a huge growth in, especially as we prioritize wellness for a remote workforce, correct?
Absolutely. We talk to our business, mainly for those who don't know Wellness Coach, we're mostly a B2B platform. So we provide wellness, mostly mental health, and also remote fitness, nutrition, cooking, financial wellness services. Everything is all remote, and we didn't plan this pre-pandemic. Like this was basically the company started pre-pandemic, so the whole thing was designed that way. And our customers are essentially, human resource departments that are adding benefits to their teams, and they're adding, healthcare and dental and vision is pretty standard, but most of them, had added some sort of fitness for their teams, right? That was sort of the focus before pandemic. either getting gym access or having a gym in the office or having some biometrics to measure, how your blood pressure levels are, this and that. And we talk to them every day, and they're like, we got to get this, we got to get something for mental health, because gyms are closed for the most part, right? And you want to go out and you want to work out, but it's companies didn't think of this, and they're adjusting rapidly.
Without a doubt, and I think that rapid adjustment is just kind of like anything else, as you've seen, throughout your career. I know throughout my career, sometimes it's sad to say it this way, but sometimes it takes a major life event, and let's face it, a pandemic is a major life event, to really see innovation start to occur. And that is what I think is going to be very interesting to watch as we go into 2021 and the decade to follow. What are you kind of seeing, and what are some of the things that you're hoping start to show up maybe in even Q1 or Q2 of next year?
Yeah, so first I want to address that a major event has to happen for us to realize the problem was always there. Chuck, it's a very good point you made, because I had a burnout and I went through depression. My wife and I started this company. We both faced burnout, and I was talking to people, and in our tech world, or most we have two Olympians that are part of the Wellness Coach platform. They both suffered mental health problems and burnouts. I think we weren't talking enough about burnout and depression before the pandemic, but they were happening. It wasn't that these issues weren't there. And then when we would talk to human resources or the leaders in the company, we would see that mental health was, in the list, but it was like the 10th item, if not it was the first, second, third were very nothing to do with mental health or what the employees were facing. We also saw that Generation Z that is entering the workforce as we speak, they were having a far more mental health issues than the older generation. So maybe the HR teams were older generations and they didn't see the problems firsthand, but the Generation Z went through 2008 financial crisis, and they saw what happened to their families, and having to foreclose homes and so on and so forth. And so they went through all of that, and so by the time they come to the workforce, they're already dealing with anxiety and stress, right? So first, the major event unfortunately had to happen for the awareness to happen, right? So then what are we, so part two of your questions, what we're going to see in Q1 and Q2. I think what we're seeing now is, how do we incorporate mental health or overall wellness for a workforce that's going to be either fully remote or partly remote? Because we all read, Amazon wants to have hybrid remote workforce. Microsoft is okay with fully remote. Square and Twitter have got rid of offices. They're like, okay, you can work from anywhere you want. So we have to rethink, what is wellness for the employees and how is it going to be consumed, right? And what is how do we prioritize which part of wellness has to be consumed? At least for now, all the conversations we have with the leaders, the core focus is, well, if you're stuck at home and you're getting this COVID fatigue, it's just mental health is number one. And the other thing is there's another stat I read, Chuck, recently, that those who were diagnosed with coronavirus, 1 in 5 have severe mental health issues post the cure. So I think for the foreseeable future, we're going to see a focus on just getting, taking care of self-care, taking care of ourselves, taking care of minds, and correlating with our coworkers and our teams remotely, but still making meaningful connections. Because I think that, you can't have it either or, like, either you're going to only meet in person or only do remote, or you have to find a way. You can't just wait for the office to open, right? You have to find a way. So those are the conversations we're having that are very, very interesting.
And you really brought up something else, and again, it's one of my own personal passion projects. When you're looking at 2019, prior to the pandemic, when you're looking at 40% of the population of the United States, or even in the world, I think now that I think about it, don't feel like they have anybody that they can actually call at 3 o'clock in the morning for for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that there is that much isolation, and then add quarantining and remote workforces and everything like that. What are some of the things you're starting to see, and how are you starting to work in kind of building those kind of frameworks so that we can kind of create a more socially connected, a well community, so to speak?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think first of all, I said to myself, in my intro, you guys talked about how I went through my own burnout and depression, and when I went through my own journey to fix my mental health, and it's still work in progress. The first thing was, accepting what is, right? Accepting that we are in a pandemic, accepting that things are normal, accepting that things may never be like they used to be, right? So I think a lot of the time I spend with my team and we spend with leaders is to just get them to say, okay, don't just accept what is, right? You don't want to say, what if this happened or what if that happens? Like just accept what is, then you can actually find a solution, right? So first, accepting what is, which is we are in a pandemic. There is a vaccine that's coming out soon. It's not going to take, everybody's not going to take it. So we're going to stay in it for a while, and the workforce is never going to be the same again like it used to be. So we have to plan for that as leaders, as employers, but to plan for that. And then what are we going to do in the meantime, for our teams and all that? So then we sort of take the second step on what are we going to do? What the whole platform we built with Wellness Coach was designed for teams, so we're designed for the workforce. So I'll talk about that first, and then we'll talk about loneliness as a problem, which is a huge problem, as a second part of it. So the first part is, what can you do with the remote workforce? Well, we start all hands or all of our team meetings with a short mindfulness practice or a stretching, like something that gets you moving or gets you focused internally, like we did with Corinne today. And I'm hoping that you and the audience that's attending found a little difference in joining another webinar, right? Like there's something different about this one, right? And I think it's important to do that. It's important to do that as a team, right? So we encourage short breaks throughout the day. Go for a walk. We actually did a burpee thing together with the whole company. Like we all did burpees together. But you can jumping jacks, you can do mindfulness practice, you can breathing practice. But I think get the team to doing something other than nonstop, Zoom calls or video conference calls that are work related, nonstop work calls. Number two is ask the question, how are you doing? And I think this is one that is getting missed. When you were in person, you would have those side cooler talks. You would have, you walk by people and, hey, how you doing? How was your weekend, right? And now, you're kind of getting on your one call after another call and sort of becoming this sort of nonstop, work, and that's taking a toll. I feel people are more productive, but they're working harder, but they're a lot more stressed because it's nonstop Zoom calls or video calls, right? So we have to sort of acknowledge that, and we have to then, the leaders in the company have to do something about it. So from a leadership perspective, encourage your team to ask, how are you doing? Genuinely, how are you doing? And then secondly, I think it's very important that I'm doing a lot lately is being kind to each co-worker, understanding that somebody in your family has had COVID or is going through a tough time or is having mental health issues as we speak right now, right? Giving people that benefit of doubt that there's something going on. On Zoom calls, it's hard to tell, like when people are very frustrated or depressed. You can kind of tell from facial expression a little bit, but it's not that easy, right? You can't just sit down and say, hey man, what's up, and let's grab a coffee, right? So taking that extra effort is critical. And I know for a fact that people that are on this call, and yourself, Chuck, like I bet you everybody's having some problem either in their own life or in their family or extended family, because that's where we are right now, right? So just acknowledging that. Now, and then number two is, over communicating. So we are doing a lot about, we do company all hands. We used to do them once a week. Now we do them twice a week, every Tuesdays and Thursdays. So over communicating, just getting together a lot more, because that's all you get to see each other is on a video call. And then the last piece there is, not just talking work, but doing some fun stuff. So we actually launched sort of team building exercises. We have brought in a Japanese magician on a call to learn magic tricks. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then we started doing like these Uber Eat meals. So like on the whole call, we have folks in India, we have folks in West Coast, so you'll have dinner to breakfast going on the same call. So just doing all of that, I think that sort of leads to the second part of loneliness as a problem. But I think for the workplace, and there are credible solutions that we're implementing and others implementing. Now, if we want to talk about outside the workplace, I think that is a huge and growing problem, and it should be, I think that's where the governments need to get involved, because like your stats were spot on. I think if you weren't having the problem before, imagine now, especially in the older generation, where they weren't getting visited by their, family and friends, and now like because in the high risk, high risk sector is getting much worse.
Absolutely, and it does. It just starts to get scarier and scarier. And let me jump in here real quick, and just so everybody knows, I do have the question section up on the on our web Zoom here. So I guess it's not web Zoom. Here I am talking Zoom, and we're on a different project. That tells you how many times I'm on this one. So on our GoToWebinar here, for our questions, feel free to jump in there and add some questions for Dee, because I've got 1,000 of them, so it's not going to be a problem. But I would love to hear from everybody on the webinar today. But Dee, kind of think about it from one perspective, and that is, when we think about the leaders today, as we have to be a little bit more checking in, like you said, checking in with the team, what are some best practices that maybe leaders can do, or maybe, those of us who are, champions of wellness can kind of offer, so that the leaders are really doing a much better job? Much like what you just said, I know that with my team, I tend to, most of my team I meet with on Monday mornings, and it's always the first question I ask is, how was your weekend? Or, what's been up, or what's, one of my coworkers and I, we were just meeting this morning, and we had a 30-minute conversation, and 20 of it was personal, just kind of talking back and forth. And then we finally got some work done. Give us some best practices that you're seeing, and maybe some of the things that you would recommend that we can get these leaders to really understand. And I know that energy is such a huge piece, because that's one of the things that I've been very much, now you meet me in person, I'm the same person, but the energy level is such an important part, especially as we go through video.
Absolutely. And so a couple of things, I think we've seen from a data perspective, just like looking at data, when you launch a wellness program which is supported by leadership, it has a much higher success rate. If you launch a wellness program that is internally, like HR has to drive it, the success rate isn't high, because you want top to down, ownership for your team's wellness, happiness and healthcare. So just, it's needed, right? Leaders have to participate, it's needed. And then what works, one of the things that we're finding, and we highly recommend, is for leaders to open up about their own issues with mental health. And I've been a lot more open than ever before personally, and it turns out, if you open up, then your team will open up too. Because like I said before, assume everybody's having some sort of difficulty dealing with this pandemic. So like, I've talked about my depression a couple of times, and it's like, it used to be a taboo to talk about mental health, but now the silver lining, I think, with the pandemic is we can openly talk about it. So if leaders talk openly, teams open up, leaders push programs from top down, teams adapt, and they're far more successful. And then, like you said, Chuck, just asking, how are you, to the team, and then training. The one more thing, I think the companies that are they were not used to this sort of switch in remote suddenly, like they never had web conference and all going on. It can be very difficult for managers to switch to being social in this digital world. So I also recommend training on how to be empathetic in a remote work environment. A lot of companies are offering that. So I think it's really a set of things you have to do that are very important. And assuming that this goes on for at least several months, this is very important to put these programs in place now. Or you should have already done some of these programs to train your team, be more social, drive top down, and be open and vulnerable.
One of my favorite questions so far, and Bill McPeck, good to see you. How are you measuring mental health for your employees, or how do you see measuring mental health?
Yeah, so I think I'll give you a little business answer, then a personal answer. Now we call this thing called effectiveness score. So every time anybody in our team or any client of ours takes a mental health class or a course, they can rate the class by was effective or not effective. Essentially, and then we aggregate that effectiveness to say, okay, it was X percentage effective, and if it effective in this segment and not that segment. So essentially, a lot of this is data driven. You can't otherwise tell, if it's working for, at least for a business. So effectiveness score is the way we do it. The good news is effectiveness score is over 90% plus for all of our clients. Sometimes it's 95. Morgan Stanley is 97% plus for them as a client. So it's really working well. I think it's a need that, there's a need. And if the tools are brought to the people that have the need, you find that effectiveness. Now, I think of myself as how has it helped me, with the tools. it's actually, it's hard to measure, but it's easy to measure in a way. So I'll explain this. My relationship with my wife got a lot better when I started using mental health tools to improve my mental health, right? First thing, it was accepting what is. So I wanted to share this example today. Last week, there was a thunder storm, a minor hurricane in Florida. I live in Miami. And so we just bought a house. We haven't moved in. And we wanted to check like if there was a flooding or not because of that thunder. So we drove in, my wife and I, we opened the door, and sure enough, there's water in the ground. And we're like, okay, there's water. What do? We call Surf Pro. We fix it, you know. Like, so before taking all the mental health training that I've taken, it would be panic. How did it get here? What happened? Anger, frustration, you know. So I think the effectiveness of mental health tools is when you're in such a situation, how do you react to the situation? And soon enough, you know, the day was wasted taking care of that thing, but it was taken care of, you know, like, and then we forgot about it. We moved on. So living in that present moment, taking care of problems, and you will just notice it. I think I honestly say I've been doing this for a few years. You know, I am very easily, I can meditate, I can not be in the present moment, but it's difficult to do it because your mind is always telling you other things. Mind is always trying to control what you think. Mind is always trying to tell you they're smarter than you yourself. There's all these things get going in your mind. So once you practice, I promise you, Sarah is listening, within a few months, you'll see notable differences in your relationship with your family, your friends, your decision-making capabilities. And then those who are into like stock and equity trading, I bet you I've actually made more money in trading than ever before after I started doing mindfulness practices, because I wasn't reacting at, oh, this news came out, boom, sell the stock or buy the stock. So personally, I can tell you it's been really beneficial, and then professionally, I can tell you for my clients it'll be very beneficial. Hope that answers this question.
I think that answered it very well. And I have to laugh. There was next question, and again, my apologies. I kind of pushed a button that I shouldn't have. Zoom fatigue. I mean, that's definitely something we're starting to feel and hear a lot more of as we're starting to see the winter coming in. You know, it's going to be a little, you know, at least for those of us who don't live in Miami. Kind of talk about some of your best practices, some of the things that you've seen work best as we start to try to get Zoom fatigue taken care of.
Yeah, so look, we started the company in 2018, pre-pandemic, and all of the company actually works remotely. We don't have an office. We didn't have one before, and so we built a culture where you were all working remotely and you were all in video conferencing. So I think then, you know, it's sort of when this happened, it was easier to transition to you know, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic world, because we didn't see it. So what do I do personally, and I think I could speak a bit to for my team as well. For me, you know, it's getting out and getting a run every morning. Getting out in nature is critical. So you know, you can't be in front of your screens all the time. You gotta, you know, take time for yourself. And I think mind and body go together. So if you're not taking care of your mind, you know, then it's hard to take care of your body, because your mind has to tell you to get up and get out for the run or do the workout. So taking care of mind is very important. So I do a short meditation every morning, 5 to 7 minutes, and then I go for a 5K run every morning. So that helps me just be balanced. And then throughout the day, taking short breaks, you know, you go for a little walk, do some stretching, you know, or get away from the computer for a little bit, you know, just like blocking your calendar throughout the day for 15-minute breaks, I think becomes really important. I try to also do like a mini cat nap in the afternoon. I'll do like a 12 to 12:15 little cat nap, which could be just a body scan meditation or something like that. But I know that, you know, during this pandemic phase, I've doubled down on taking care of my own self than I was doing before. And turns out, you know, it's actually been, you know, I heard this from folks, like the pandemic has actually made them healthier, which is like, you know, very ironic. But if you get disciplined, and now you have discipline, right? So what, if you want to talk about some of the good things, like what are some of the good things? Well, you're not rushing to the airport all the time. You're not chasing flights. You're not missing your connections, right? So there's a lot of things that are also positive. And then if you have your mindset, you know, have a positive mindset, and then you follow through, you can have a, you know, you won't be thinking about the fatigue. One last thing I'll say, actually, which I think is very, very important, that helped me dramatically, is writing a journal. So I actually started writing every day in the morning a journal. And the journal would be, you know, how am I doing today? Like, and what am I grateful for? So you can say 3 things I'm grateful for, or, you know, you have your plan. So I have a personal thing, which I say BTY, better than yesterday. So I have this like purpose in life that I want to be better than yesterday. Simple goals, right? So then I just write down like, what did I do today that is better than yesterday? And just writing this journal has helped me tremendously deal with stress and anxiety of the pandemic. Because when I read the journal, then I realize the life is actually not that bad, But then if you're not doing that, then you go in this negative spiral. And what happens is our minds are very negatively biased, right? That's why the top news is always a breaking news is bad, right? There's no like breaking good news, right? It never happened. Right?
Something else great happened. No, I
It never
didn't hear
happened. Right? So we are so conditioned to negative thoughts, negative news, that we have to take that time for ourselves to think about positive things, write them down, and condition yourself a little differently.
that. Absolutely. I'm getting a number of questions, and I'm going to kind of slap them all somewhat together. Um, as you're talking to various organizations, and again, I'm going to throw a little bit of my own personal thoughts in here as well. I have found that it's typically not necessarily the top leader or even the leadership that's running into issues about whether or not they want mental health. It's kind of further down the leadership ladder. Where are you seeing the biggest roadblocks to bringing mental health practices, some of the burnout pieces? Where is the biggest roadblock that you're seeing, and how can we maybe overcome that a little bit?
No, it's a really good question because we see that every day, and we see that throughout the organizations. And I think it depends, first of all, I think it depends on the size of the organization. The small organizations make quick decisions, and they can, the leadership and, the team is a tight team, that's much easier. The bigger the organization, the more complex it gets. So let's talk about health insurance for a second, because it's related to this answer. There's two types of companies, one that have fully insured healthcare, and then one that have self-insured healthcare. Fully insured means, you're typically 1,000 employees or less. Insurance companies paying for everything, and you basically don't have people taking care of the insurance problem. You've outsourced the whole problem. 1,000 and up, you bring folks in to take care of insurance. You sort of self-insure yourself. Health insurance companies pays the bills, but you're managing like how it's divided and what happens, right? So the bigger you get, the problem gets even more complex, because then when it comes to mental health, who is paying for it? Like if you're fully insured, then you can just pass it on to the insurance company and they budget for it. Like then that's easier. And in our customer set, fully insured companies also get this new thing called the wellness funds, which if you have a health broker, you have to ask them for wellness funds. And I at this point, I would say 50% of our customers are getting wellness funds from the insurance companies to pay for mental health programs. So that's great, right? So I think it comes down to, is it important or not? Yes, but how does it fit in my healthcare cloud program? Who pays for it? Is it the health insurance paying for it, or I pay for it? So that's the first piece. Now, if you're self-insured, which is a larger company, it gets pretty complicated, because you then have a specific budget for the year that you already planned for, and now you got this new thing. So now you're basically trading stuff, right? So what has changed throughout this year is elective surgeries are much lower down. People aren't actually taking care of their health because they don't want to go to the hospital. They want to, like, I've been to a dentist, unfortunately. I'm sorry to share that, but I'm scared of sitting next to the dentist for a while. It's like with COVID-19. So I think you have to then think about, what are people not doing that they were doing before, and how can we find the budgets for therapy, mental health services from that? And that's a dialogue. So if you have any questions, reach out to us. We're happy to help you. We have wellness consultants happy to help you, but I think the problem is in the middle. It's not from the top, to your point, Chuck, absolutely. And the middle gets stuck because of the older ways of doing things, and this readjustment has to happen, essentially.
You know what, Dee, I agree with you so much in that regards, because what I spent 20 years in HR before I got into the wellness world. And one of the things that I always saw was I always had leadership support in so many different avenues and so many different things that I was doing. It was breaking through what I'm going to call the cultural habits, the routines, the instruments that everybody's used to. At 10:05, we hit the water cooler. At 1 o'clock, we all do our stretch breaks. It's almost, it's that ever famous, that's kind of routine. And to try to break those routines is tough. And well, it's interesting. Another great conversation, because you brought it up, and I thought it'd bring right to it, is we're now talking about, instead of like going to college and getting the freshman 15, we're talking about the Zoom 15, or the at-home 15. What are you seeing opportunity-wise that we can do maybe to help encourage people to break some of those same habits and maybe eat healthier, or be a little bit more active? I know you brought a few things in there with the 15-minute breaks, and I've done that myself. What are some other things that you're seeing?
Yeah, so one of the things that's been very, very successful for us has been getting people together as a team and then doing team wellness challenges. This is something we saw. Wellness takes effort, right? If you want to get fit, if you want to get fit mentally or physically, you gotta put time into it, like anything else. Your muscles are gonna build themselves, right? Either mental muscles or body muscles. So, how do you get people to engage? That's the big tricky question for individuals or companies. And the data over and over shows if you have a buddy, if you have somebody doing it with you, pushing you, then you will have a better success rate. So we launched this program called Team Challenges, where you can actually divide the company into 4 or 10 teams, and each team will basically, work together as a team towards a wellness goal. That could be doing 1,000 minutes of, workout and meditation, or whatever the goal is, or eating healthier. And then the winning team gets something in return. So we work with HR to say, okay, let's put some rewards that are people actually care for. So it could be paid time out, it could be recognition, it could be all kinds of stuff. Like we did one with Kimberly Clark that was very successful, where they had PTO as the reward, and people got competitive. They did all kinds of wellness stuff, and then even though they didn't win, they won, right? Because they engaged in their own healthcare. And we also see when challenges end, then they sort of start, like, not everybody, start going back to the same or habits of prioritizing something else. So we highly recommend doing group activities to get everybody moving. And the more competitive you can make it, the better. Like if you can have different East Coast versus West Coast, like or engineering versus finance, like something like that. I think that gets people going.
You know what? And I've talked about this program for years because it's one of my all-time favorite programs. There was an organization that did a Walk to Hawaii program. This was a number of years ago. 6.5 million steps over the course of 1 year. And everybody that reached that, and that's about 6,500 steps a day, by the way. Or I'm sorry, 2.5 million steps over, and it was about 6,500 steps a day. But everybody that reached that plateau got their name thrown into a hat for an all-expense paid trip to Hawaii for 5 days.
That's brilliant.
And they have about 550, 575 employees. 250 started it, and 155 people completed it. One person won the award, but I can't tell you how many times I had heard testimonials like, I didn't win the trip to Hawaii, but I won my life back, or it's those kinds of things that you really start to think about. So thinking about it from that perspective, those become very mental health oriented. And again, I think because there's social dynamics to it, and there's also, physical activity and emotional activity kind of go very much hand in hand. What are some other things, Dee, maybe I'll say it this way, outside the box, that we're seeing being utilized for remote workforces, particularly on the mental health side?
Yeah, so first I want to share an example on this. We did a executive team challenge with Wynn Resorts, which is one of the nicest resorts in Vegas if you've been to. And the HR people that worked on the program, they were quite excited about it. But it's work for HR. You have to put the program together to launch it. And then they shared this feedback with us that the head chef of all the restaurants would come to them and say, I did 10-minute meditation today with my wife, and I did together. And the guy who runs the casino floorboard would say, oh, I actually know how to meditate now. I know what this means. Like, it really, this is the rewards for the organization is huge. Like, just getting it together, putting it together, and launching it is the hard part. But then, like you said about this Hawaii example, which I actually absolutely love, because I think what that does is not, this is aspirational. You get this 5 days in Hawaii. It's such a great reward. I actually love it. So what are other people doing? I think this is like a really innovative time. We're seeing just people innovate dramatically in terms of how we can take care of each other's mental health. So let's not talk innovation for a second. Let's come back to the reality. The reality is everything's accessible, from your phone. You don't have to go anywhere, and that was the case even before the pandemic. But now, accessibility, is always there. So teledoc or telehealth is a huge thing. And then, the thing about therapy is it's in the highest demand it's ever been. The biggest issue with therapy used to be pairing the right individual with the right therapist, and I think that's where a lot of innovations happen, where the pairing has gotten a lot better. Because oftentimes you'd say, oh, it didn't work for me. Well, why didn't it work for you? Because the pairing wasn't right. You didn't have the right coach or the right therapist. So we've done a lot of work in that pairing piece, and then a lot of companies in the tech world are doing a lot of good work in the pairing piece. And then the third thing is there's a feedback loop. In the previously you didn't have this feedback loop of rating the therapist, rating your coach, or rating the class itself and seeing if it's good or not. Now there's a feedback loop for everything. Like you can rate anything you want, and it's a two-way street. Like you actually now can get real value out of the time and money you're spending. So I think the innovations that already happened but not deployed at scale yet are very, very good compared to just 2 or 3 years ago. And the technology is there. I remember when we launched this company, everybody didn't have high-speed internet. I mean, when on the phone especially, it was so difficult, right? So now we have, everybody's got the high-speed internet at home at least, right? And on the phone, you've got 5G just launching. So I think technology-wise and the platforms are there for the future for sure. So that's the first thing I would say. Chuck, what are you seeing? I don't want to interview you, but I know you have a lot of knowledge in the space.
First and foremost, I agree with you, Dee. I mean, you're starting to see rural areas, especially getting more internet, at least in the United States. So we're definitely seeing that high-speed piece really kicking in, and that's going to be such a critical success factor as we start to have even a more remote workforce. One of the things that I think is what I'm most excited about seeing, and again, looking at it from that positive perspective, is to really start to have what I'm going to call this web of support. And this is a terminology that has been kind of brought to me by some folks that I'm very intimately involved with. Dr. Jane Ellery is her name, and she happens to be my sister. So it tends to be a very intimate when I say it that way. But this web of support idea, and it's this idea of how do we make sure that we can get people understanding that we can't necessarily, guess what? We're not going to be able to get Dee Sharma to show up in 14 different rural locations over a 4-day period of time. But with the advent of technologies and with the advent of being able to maybe bring you into a group like this, all of a sudden we have 1,000+ people that are now understanding of what's going on, and then how do we support those folks as they're out there trying to make these things happen. To me, this is what I'm most excited about going into 2021 in the future, is how do we make sure that we can kind of create these well finders, and make sure that the champions out there are truly supported and moving forward, so we can get out to that last mile, that rural area, and help those folks that need the access, much like we need to get it into lower socioeconomic and all the underserved areas. That to me is what I'm probably most excited about, and where I think we're going to be able to make a huge difference. And it's programs and tools and expertise like you, as we start to kind of build these things together, that are going to that's really what's going to make the difference, I think, as we move forward. What's your thoughts?
I absolutely agree. So a couple of things I would say. One is that Wellness Coach has live classes throughout the day. They're all free to join, and each of them have community of people, 60 to 80 people. And so if anybody's getting lonely, if somebody's getting lonely, they want to share, there's no cost. So we were talking about accessibility. So there's a lot of live classes anybody can join. They're free to join, and that's one way to get out and not feel lonely, be in a group. Second, on the technology piece that you were mentioning, Chuck, we hired a amazing coach. His name is Jack Green. He was on your program earlier. He's a double Olympian, and he's actually in London. He's been in the Olympics twice, and he's actually writing a wellness program for us. But you can also have him be with him in that class. So I think the world is sort of coming together, becoming smaller. So if you're in remote areas, you don't have all the things you need. Well, I think the technology is there where it can come to you. It can be accessible to you.
Without a doubt. So I'll tell you what, Dee, last few minutes here, let's talk a little bit about what you're going to be able to offer everybody. And I'm really excited to be able to say that we're excited to have you offer this to them. So kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have a special plan for everybody that's attending. We are offering our enterprise product free for 60 days. So when you apply for it, just put in an email NWI, and we'll know it's coming from this group. But then even then, we're also going to help you work with your insurance companies and your brokers to get it funded. So if you're worried about how can we afford the program, we will help you all through that. But then it turns out you can't afford it, your teams can't afford it. There's tons of free resources we've added in, especially because of the pandemic, that you can attend. Lots of live classes, lots of on-demand programs. So there's something in it for everybody, and I hope you enjoy it. Then you should look at the ratings and reviews. Like Chuck, you were saying, like our ratings are life-changing, life-changing, life-changing. So there's a lot of life-changing work that's going on, and I would love for you to be part of it.
Love this very much so, Dee. Final words. What do you want to? What are those action items that you would love to see people take as they are leaving here and knowing that we're hoping to create this web of support?
Yeah, Chuck, I thought about this webinar, and I thought, what has personally helped me take care of my own mental health or wellness? And I want to recommend only what I know with experience has been helpful. So number one, I would say, please start a journal. Write something good every day. What are you grateful for every day? Think about what's your life's purpose. And if you can think about your purpose sooner, the better. And how, when you write your journal, what are you doing is achieving your purpose. So those two are very intertwined. Purpose creates happiness. Otherwise, we're sort of wandering around in the world without clear direction. So write a journal, think about your purpose, and journal the purpose and approach every day. Take some time for mindfulness, and take some time for getting your body moving and activity. Mind-body connection is very important, especially right now with the pandemic. And then lastly, call your friends and family. Call somebody new every day. Don't just text. Make a phone call. Do a video call. Video calls are great. I mean, what I found is in this pandemic, I'm actually more connected to my friends and family than I was before. Because before I was like, oh, I'll see you when I get there. Whenever I fly to California, I'll see my friends there, or I got in New York. But now I know I'm not flying, so I take the extra effort to connecting with my friends and family. So take that extra effort. There's a blessing in everything, and there's a silver lining in everything. So I think there's a lot of silver lining with the pandemic here, that we can actually take care of ourselves, create that web for ourselves, and start a new path.
Dee Sharma, thank you so much for your time today. I could not be more excited about this conversation, and looking forward to many more conversations with you in 2021.
Same here. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Great. Thank you so much. So we can certainly take a couple questions from the audience here yet, if you'd like. But before we do so, I'll go over a couple more reminders. We are recording this, and we'll have an email coming out this afternoon. So those of you who may want to review some of the information, we'll have that link to the recording there. Also, in the handout section here, you can download the PDF that has the contact information and the information on that wonderful offer from Wellness Coach. So thank you for that again, Dee. And then finally, those of you who need continuing education credit, if you've only called in and you haven't logged in, we do need to know that you're on this call. So you just can email us at nwi@nationalwellness.org to let us know you're on the call. And please do complete the evaluation that'll pop up at the end here, or via the link in this afternoon's email. That is required if you need continuing education credit, but we would love feedback from all of you. So Chuck, do you want to take a couple more questions from the audience?
Yeah, real quick. What was the name of the company that was just mentioned with coaching? Dee, was that, who was that? Was that Win?
Live. Same company.
Okay,
Wellness Coach.
That's what I thought. What was the most effective way to use wellness funds for remote workers? If you need to choose between fitness classes, mental health, or group challenges, Dee, what would you choose there? And I know my answer would be a little bit of a hybrid, but what's your answer?
I think it's a hybrid. I would sort of do a survey and ask what are the main problems your team is having, and then give them at least 10 different choices and one open box question. So far, what we're seeing, our HR teams have asked us, oh, why don't we do a fitness challenge? And then turns out the team is like, we really need mental health and support right now. So can we do fitness later? So I think really it is stress and anxiety, just teaching how to deal with ups and downs of life. And then also recommend courses, so you can offer like a 3, 4, 5 week course where it's just exclusively for your team around building empathy, or building resilience. So there's many ways to go about it. That's where I think your broker will help. We have wellness consultants that can help as well.
Do you have any advice to people that are looking for creating maybe lunchtime virtual check-ins, maybe group social check-ins for your employees and groups? Do you have some good advice for them?
Yeah, I think I just all the advice is do it. I'm sure you already have the tools. You can do it over Slack, Zoom, anything. But just do it. Put it on the calendar. Put it on your team's calendar, and just do it.
Do you think there should be any kind of, I'll say it this way, rules? In other words, making sure that you don't get too personal, but you also don't, you don't get very business oriented. Are you seeing anybody putting in kind of rules to have those check-ins?
Yeah, so I think the one more thing on check-ins is it's actually good to have a wellness committee within your company if you can bring people from different parts of the company together, because then the rules question is answered by that committee and they're responsible for these activities. So I would recommend at least somebody from leadership, somebody that's most enthusiastic about the company's health and wellness, somebody that actually does things, not just talks about it. So like bringing 4 or 5 people together and say, hey, you guys are the wellness committee, and why don't you guys decide what the solution should be for us as a company, and then let them define the rules. But the one thing I had said before, Chuck, which was about being vulnerable, being open about mental health issues, that is critical. So whosoever you decide as your committee, make sure they're openly able to talk about mental health issues that they're personally suffering from, or they may have dealt with and overcome, because that is very powerful for the rest of the people to hear and follow.
Without a doubt. Thank you, Dee. Thank you so much for your time today, and have a very happy new year. And let's put 2020 behind us and let's look towards 2021.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it better. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, everybody, for having me. Appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Thanks for joining
you,
us,
everybody.
everyone. Thanks, Chuck and Dee.